Not everyone is born with a perfect mixture of genetics. Many bodybuilders have to combat very tough genetic disadvantages to achieve their goals. Let's check out some amazing bodybuilders who overcame their bad genetics and managed to succeed in the field of bodybuilding. Number 4. Arnold Schwarzenegger. This one is not a name you would expect to be on this list, but yes, even the legend Arnold Schwarzenegger has his weaknesses. Schwarzenegger, even from a young age, was simply destined to become one of the greatest bodybuilders ever. He was blessed with the right genetics for bodybuilding, especially in the arms and chest department. Some people argued that he was top-heavy and had no legs or calves. Arnold does have some pretty great genetics in his own right. However, if you take a closer look, you'll see that the man possessed below-average leg definition, particularly in the calves. The Austrian oak had to work tirelessly at building up the muscle group to its championship-level stature. In his early days, his calves were relatively poor, but he later changed that by training them harder. His calves improved so much that some bodybuilders believed he got implants. Arnold always enjoys life to the full, but was extremely driven and focused, and had his mind set on becoming the best bodybuilder in the world. If he had weak areas, he worked hard on those to bring them up. He had the mindset to do that, which not many people have. Arnold built a huge physique, which at one point amassed over 250 pounds, but still had a relatively tight, small waist, which you don't see in bodybuilders today. Even though he carried a lot of mass, he still looked athletic and graceful on stage while posing. Aesthetics used to be everything when it came to bodybuilding. However, in modern bodybuilding, mass seems to be prevailing over aesthetics. Arnold won Mr. Olympia 7 times, which in those days was unheard of. He also holds the record as being the youngest ever Mr. Olympia winner at 23 years old. Number 3. Dorian Yates. Bodybuilding success is unfortunately partly determined by one's innate physical makeup. This helps to explain why, out of thousands of men and women who take up bodybuilding every year, only a few become professionals, and of them, only 10 have become Mr. Olympia. Dorian Yates is perhaps the greatest British bodybuilder of all time. Certainly, he was the British bodybuilding king of the 90s. He is a 6-time Mr. Olympia. He has stood up on the world stage opposite legends like Ronnie Coleman and come away victorious. He was a brick house of English dominance and power. Yates is well known and well remembered for not having the same aesthetic grace as anomalies like Flex Wheeler. He had to work harder if he was going to take the stage alongside them. This is exactly what he did. In the end, they struggled to keep up with him. He trained so hard and kept his diet so strict that he overcame what he lacked in the genetic department with brute force, determination, and strict, controlled, aggressive willpower. Yates epitomized brutal bodybuilding workouts. However, he kept it controlled at all times. Even as he seemed to go harder and more manic than any man should be able to, he was in total control of every movement. His form was perfect, his programming spot on, and his results came strong and steady. He was simply far more intense than anyone had previously seen. When Dorian Yates was in his prime, the subject of steroids in bodybuilding was a bit more controversial. Nowadays, he can look back and explain why he chose to start juicing in the first place. With that said, the success that he had did not come naturally, as he has been open about his use of steroids in the later years of his career. Speaking in an interview, he explained his decision to start using in the first place, saying that he knew that he would be competing against others who were on gear, so he decided to join them. Yates said, "I did it to prepare for my first contest because I'm like, if I'm competing, I know the other guys in the contest are going to be on stuff, so I just wanted to be on an even playing field." In the end, he is known for overcoming bad genetics with hard work and dedication. Dorian is often referred to as a source of inspiration because he is seen as an example of a guy who made it despite his bad genetics. Number 2. Franco Columbu. Franco Columbu was a power builder. He trained heavily and was known for his strength. As a competitive powerlifter, he was much stronger than Arnold in the gym, and pound for pound he became one of the strongest bodybuilders ever. It was Arnold that convinced Franco to try his hand at bodybuilding, as that was where the money was to be made. One of the most well-known facts about Franco Columbu is his deep relationship with bodybuilding great Arnold Schwarzenegger. The two were close friends and training partners for 5.5 decades. The two were extremely supportive of each other's ventures throughout the years. They each helped the other out whenever they could. They were oftentimes seen with a smile on their faces whenever they were together. In fact, Columbu was even the best man at Arnold's wedding. Franco became one of the best bodybuilders ever, winning the Mr. Olympia contest on 2 occasions. He was extremely muscular and famous for his split upper chest development. For a short guy, his muscle insertions were unfortunately just as short. He did build an incredible physique, but poor arm genetics meant that he was never going to have arms like Arnold. A well-known and respected bodybuilder by the name of Danny Padilla was also short in height, probably about the same height as Franco, maybe even a tad shorter. However, Danny's physique was misleading. Standing on his own, you would never think of Danny being so short. This was due to his long, full muscle insertions. But Franco, on the other hand, didn't have these magical muscle insertions. However, he did build a solid, strong, muscular physique, which in his prime looked tremendous. His chest, abs, shoulders, and especially his back were simply out of this world. His arms, even with his short muscle insertions, still looked fantastic as his biceps genetically peaked high. Franco Columbu demonstrated just how strong he was by competing at the 1977 World's Strongest Man contest, which unfortunately resulted in Franco obtaining a serious injury that took him many years for him to fully recover. His comeback at the 1981 Mr. Olympia, which resulted in him winning, may have been controversial, but given his serious career-ending injury 4 years earlier, in 1977, it was flat-out amazing for Franco to be walking again, let alone training and competing. Number 1. Chris Dickerson. Chris Dickerson is one of the most inspirational bodybuilders in the history of the sport, not only because of what he achieved with his physique, but because of the impact he had on the industry as a person. He was the first black, gay, and over 40 bodybuilder to be crowned Mr. Olympia. Not only that, he was one of the shortest athletes to win at just 5'6", and he only started training at 24. Chris's story is one of a bodybuilder training against all odds, both physically and psychologically. He was starting off in an industry he was too old and short to begin, with a race and orientation most people wouldn't accept. This is how he proved everyone wrong. There were 3 main factors Chris knew were up against him when competing in bodybuilding. That last one is the most important. Chris knew he'd have problems with his race and sexual orientation. Racism and homophobia were rampant. However, he knew this would only affect how he was viewed as a person, which he knew he could overcome, whereas his height would affect how he was judged as a bodybuilder, a factor he couldn't influence as easily. In 1965, 2 years after starting training, Dickerson entered his first competition, Mr. Long Beach, coming in 3rd place. Rather than viewing it as a failure, Chris was happy with the results and still remembers 1965 Mr. Long Beach as one of his favorite events. He said, "To this day, this trophy remains my sentimental favorite. I was never to be the same again after winning my first trophy." Brimming with motivation, Dickerson entered 12 competitions back on the East Coast in 1966 and won every single one. Within a year, Chris Dickerson had become a bodybuilding sensation, and it was only a matter of time before he realized he was worthy of an Olympia. Many people think he should not have won the Mr. Olympia title due to his unappealing and protruding elbows that ruined his look in certain poses. Others complained his arms were too small for his overall frame. Chris Dickerson had a superb lower body, but unfortunately never had the upper body genetics to match. His back was tremendous, no doubt, but his chest and arms were a major letdown for him. His height and other specific features may not have been favorable, but Dickerson believed the secret to his success was all about proportions. With his calves, neck, and biceps all measuring exactly the same size, he was perfect for the aesthetic direction the sport had been heading in. That's all for this video, folks. See you another time.